When doing an in-depth study of the Holy Quran, you come across the ayah or the chapter or the verse that says that Quran has no contradictions in it. That's a very serious challenge for the researchers to find contradictions in the Holy Quran. This is a challenge that no other book can make except the Holy Quran. If the researchers look at this issue from a point of view of logic, the field of logic, and utilize the 4 principles of logic to evaluate the statement of the Quran, you have to go all the way back to the time of Aristotle the Great, and then the 3 principles he presented in logic. The first law of logic is law of identity. The number 2 law is law of non-contradiction. In this second law, for example, we look at, some people have this question about if your God is omnipotent, he can do anything and everything, can he create a rock that he cannot lift himself? This kind of paradoxical question is basically does not, this logic principle basically takes care of that. That's an illogical question. The third law of logic is the law of excluded middle. Which means every statement is either true or false. This was a valid logical statement until about 100 years ago. Mathematicians had a problem with it, that even this statement has a fallacy in it, or there's inherent contradiction in it. If every statement is either true or false, that means this statement is also either true or false. So as a result, they came to the conclusion that there should have been an additional word added to it to better explain it. So it should have said every statement except this statement is either true or false. Fourth law of logic is the law of sufficient reason. Basically, simply put, it means A implies B. This law was basically the latest addition in the theory of logic in the 19th century by the German scholar Schopenhauer. This is his last contribution to the theory of logic. When discussing the fourth law of logic, we discussed that A implies B, but the opposite is not necessarily true. For example, rain implies wet roads, but wet roads not necessarily explain that is the rain could be the cause of it. It could be wet for many other reasons. It could be a flood or gutter overflowing. So this kind of relationship is basically there's a fallacy there. For example, when there's a line in the Holy Quran, or an ayat as we call it in Islam, that talks about Jews and Christians and our relationship with those 2 religions. And in Quran, the verse roughly means that you cannot trust Jews and Christians at any time, or do not trust them, Quran says. But that was in a certain context, in a certain historical background of certain events that are not mentioned in that line, one line. But if you there's many times in Quran where Quran praises some of the attributes that Jews and Christians have, and even some of the Muslims are allowed to marry Christians or Jewish girls or people of the book. So if we evaluate this statement just on the basis of Quran tells us not to trust Christians and Jews, well then how can you marry a girl from a faith of Judaism or Christianity? So that statement is discussed many times. People in the West bring out that statement, and so there is a contradiction there that it needs to be clarified. This is a big challenge that Quran throws at everybody to evaluate the Holy Quran based on these 4 principles, logic principles. And we will also from time to time do more programs exploring this subject, and do we welcome any questions or any inquiries in this matter, any interaction. Please do not hesitate to call us.